Sahana Vavatu Sahano Vunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavai Tejasvinavaditamastu Mavid Vishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us, may he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Om peace, peace, peace. And good evening. We are continuing our reading of selections from the complete works of Swami Ramakrishnananda, often called the Apostle to the South for Sri Ramakrishna, since he went down and founded the centers down in the southern part of India. And we are in a section called The Search After Happiness, and there are 12 different sections in this particular section, sections out of sections, and the first couple are pretty short, so we probably will do a couple of them today, and it's entitled, Who Am I? When I read that, I'm always reminded of the caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland, who kept asking Alice who she was. And of course, she kept trying to identify with things that weren't what the caterpillar wanted her to identify with, like her body and her mind. And of course, her body had kept changing. She kept growing taller and shorter because of the mushrooms she was eating. And then she kept thinking, well, what do I know? And am I one of my friends? Have I turned into one of my friends? And then she tried to figure out what she knew, and that didn't work either. So she couldn't figure it out from her mind or her body. So let's see if Ramakrishnananda could have answered Alice's questions any better. All right, Atma, would you like to begin?
Who am I? It is the easiest of all the questions to ask, but the most difficult to answer. Almost all men of the world do not seriously require any further answer to this, but that they are Mr. So-and-so. Brahmanas or non-Brahmanas? Hindus or Muhammad? Or Christians? Dark or fair? Wealthy or poor? And so on. And their mind is quite satisfied with the answer. For all practical purposes, they are materialists. Although some of them may profess that they are some conscious entity other than this mere lump of flesh called body, their consciousness of I is never free from the shackles of matter, their ego being inextricably intertwined with flesh. But there come moments in the life of all, more or less, when a word, suggestion, a glimpse, revealed perchance, makes the mind soar up, like Shelley's Skylark, quote, higher still and higher from the earth, end quote, and perceives the moving images of matter like so many distant passing shadows, growing indistincter every moment, while itself is bathed with a serener light unseen, unfelt before. When man comes down from such a mood into the ordinary consciousness of humdrum life, the first feeling that irresistibly arises within his heart interrogates, is our present consciousness real? But the inertia of his usual life does not allow him to stand long in that questioning mode. It draws the curtain immediately over the afterglow of that precious moment's experience, and makes the mind move in the old rut again. The man begins to dream once more the dream of physical life, owning fully the pain and pleasure, joys and sorrows of his bodily existence.
You know, in the other classic fairy tale, The Wizard of Oz, you know, the Tin Man's made out of tin, the Straw Man's made out of straw, and Dorothy's made out of meat. So talk about misidentification. They're made out of meat. Oh dear. So, of course, yeah, this is our general problem, is that our ego tends to make us see ourselves as a body and mind complex living in this world of Maya. And the trouble is we don't realize it's a world of Maya, just like Alice didn't realize she was in a dream world. And neither did Dorothy. They were both in dream worlds, and that's what we're in. We're in a kind of a dream world, this world of Maya, and so we've identified ourselves with this body and mind, and that's our difficulty. And of course, this consciousness is designed to go out through the senses, and when they go out through the senses, when the consciousness goes out through the senses, then the sense organs bring in all these different sense impressions, and those are all filtered through our consciousness, and we know that our sense organs don't always present things even exactly the way they are physically, and so it's no wonder we get confused. We're presented with this picture that really doesn't tell us who we are, tells us something else. All right, let's continue here.
The dictum, "Know thyself," is the dictum of necessity of man. Man, in the morning hours of his evolutionary career, bristling still with the instincts of brute life, places all his interests and concerns in the physical plane. He draws all his life joys and sorrows from mere material objects.
Now, of course, wasn't that what was written over Plato's Academy, Know Thyself, the ancient Greek academy that Plato founded? I believe that's where he's quoting that. The dictum, Know Thyself. Anyway, the Greek philosophers realized that there were some peculiarities about this world too, and that the reality was something that we needed to try to understand. And of course, Plato talked about the ideals, the ideal forms, and so forth that were beyond this ordinary world. It's I thought it was interesting that the Greek philosophers never seemed to incorporate all the gods and goddesses and mythologies into their philosophy, whereas in Hinduism we have a situation where you can blend the two. You can understand the role of the gods and goddesses within the framework of the various philosophies of India, unless you're an extreme Advaitist that doesn't want to talk about those things at all. But in general, they're incorporated in it, whereas it doesn't seem like that happened with the Greeks. Of course, the Greek philosophy got interrupted with Christianity, you could say. So it didn't really have the millennia to develop that Hinduism had. All right, let's read another paragraph.
At first, he thinks he's happy with his course, but soon he comes to realize that to be happy, he must have more and more than what he presently possesses, as he feels an unintermitted flow of thirst for more is ever welling up from within. The spur of want drives him on, in that mad race he brings all his physical and intellectual powers to bear upon the point, contriving all sorts of means to gratify his ever-increasing desires. But when the long, weary race is run enough to fatigue the laboring man, he wakes up at last to the fact the flame of desire is never extinguished by its enjoyment. It increases with the enjoyment, as the fire flares up the more when more ghee is poured into it.
Yes, it reminds me of our situation these days with television as a form of entertainment. 60 years ago, you were lucky if you had maybe 3 channels or 5 channels or 6 channels, and then you got UHF channels, and maybe you could get a few more. But now you have so many choices that it's completely overwhelming. So our desire for entertainment has gotten completely out of hand. And you used to have to wait for your favorite program. You know, so-and-so is going to come on at 8 o'clock on Thursday night. So you plan things around that, and you plan to watch your favorite show. Now you can pretty much watch anything you want anytime you want. Yeah, you can binge watch. You can watch the episode after episode of the same show. So it doesn't seem to end. It seems like it simply creates its own problems of having so many choices that you don't know what to do. You're completely overwhelmed. And by the time you figured out what it is you want to watch, it's time to go to bed. So our trying to fulfill our desires has kind of run amok in that sense. You could say we just have too many choices and too many ways to fulfill our desires, too many choices of restaurants, too many choices in the supermarket. You go down the aisles, you've got a whole huge row of just cereals. How different can they be? They're all made out of about 4 ingredients: wheat, corn, and rice and sugar. And somehow they've managed to make as enough to fill an entire row at an enormous supermarket. So anyway, this is our dilemma. We've been able to expand our choices beyond anything that's realistic. And it certainly doesn't seem to make us any happier, does it? All right, let's read his next paragraph.
But still he feels the gnawing pain of want. Although a change has come in its mode, first it was in the form of hankering for happiness. But now it has changed into the thirst for peace, the labor after the day's fatiguing toil, which is no more the wearisome mirth of revelry, but is seeking the calm oblivion of his physical life in sweet repose. Peace, the delightful joy, born of the harmony of life, the sweet felicity that comes after the cessation of senses like normal strife. Where can it be had? In the same senses? Oh no. Experiences tell that they produce intoxication and fever that leave behind only alien prostration. Then can it come when all the clamors of the senses are quelled? Perhaps. An effort is being made to stop the senses for a while from responding to the external stimuli. The mind becomes a little introspective and finds a slight peace in it.
Yeah, this is a long paragraph, so we'll pause here for a minute. This also reminds me of the searching out this peace after long weeks of work. And so people will go to some campground and they take their camper and they take their boom box and they take their balls that they're going to play with and their computer games. You wonder, why did they bother to go into the mountains? They've brought all the noisemakers and things with them. They're not sitting quietly and taking long, gentle, peaceful strolls through nature and that sort of thing. And they're lucky not to run into a zillion other people trying to get away from it all. So this is again our dilemma. We tend to not really understand that this peacefulness that we're searching for is within, and that the true self is within. It's not all these external things. Okay, let's continue.
But still, is there the harrowing concourse of previous sense impressions pressing hard to break out into riotous activity again? So an attempt is next made to purge the mind of the impressions, or at least to drive them down to subconscious plane. In so attempting, when a certain degree of mental quietude is reached, the mind becoming empty, as it were, to a certain extent, there comes all on a sudden a flash of chit, revealing the true nature of man, and along with it, the man who tastes a kind of bliss, the like of which he never experienced before, compared with which all the enjoyments of a previous life appear so mean, so vulgar, a drop in the ocean. A complete metamorphosis ensues next in his inner life. The center of consciousness is shifted from the body and mind to something that transcends both, yet forms their background. The ego, discarding the concrete name and form, nama and rupa, tends to sublimate into the ethereal purity of the absolute. And finally, the grain is sifted completely from the chaff. The soul stands out in its own absolute nature, quite apart from all the modifications of body and even of mind. Man finds then there is no I or thou in him. He is the immutable, eternal, uncreated ocean of consciousness, absolute, rolling from eternity to eternity. No space or time element is there to modify him. He is the uncaused cause of the dreams of life, yet untarnished by the dreams. He is the ever pure, immortal Atman. The moment this real nature of the self is realized, all misery ceases, all want vanishes, all fear disappears. The man feels nothing to achieve. He has attained the highest. He has attained the eternal, undying peace.
Remind me again of another story of the sorcerer's apprentice who wanted help in his chores, and so he used a little magic. He only knew a little, so he was able to multiply and bring to life some of the brooms and make them carry the water, but then he couldn't control it, and it just got out of hand. And the more he tried to stop them, the more they multiplied. And so that's kind of the situation with desires. If you try to fulfill your desires, they tend to multiply. And if you try to attack it too directly, you end up just multiplying your desires even more. And finally, the master wizard, which would be your true self, your ultimate self, has to come to your rescue and quiet down all those restless desires. All right, well, that was the first little section, and now we can start the second one in this group, which is called What is the Soul?
There are many who claim that the universe is never really destroyed. Just as through the day many objects are visible, on a dark night, although they are still there, they cannot be seen. So pralaya, or dissolution, some say, is like that. The universe is still there, but cannot be perceived. Matter is indestructible. Forms come and forms go, but that which is behind all forms is indestructible, and that indestructible substance is called matter. Now there is a meeting here. It began at 7:30 and will break up at 8:30. Then the meeting will disappear. But those who form the meeting will not vanish. The same way, the objects which constitute the universe may come and go. But that which makes up these objects does not go. For this reason, forms are never real. Hence, from this we learn that which has a form, is not real. Only the formless can be real. A form, according to geometry, is that which is bounded by lines. Only that which is not bounded by lines, therefore, can be real. And that must be the infinite. Therefore, the infinite alone is real, and the infinite is God. Hence, God is the only reality.
And of course, this idea of pralaya, in the Big Bang model, they think of it in that in something similar to that terms, where if you think about the Big Bang, the Big Crunch, following it, that the universe somehow started in a Big Bang and it all expanded out, and then they were hoping that there'd be enough matter in the universe to bring it all back together again into a big crunch. That doesn't seem to be the case at the moment. The expansion seems to be getting faster and faster, not slower and slower. But anyway, that was the idea, and that would be pralaya. Now, Swami Vivekananda said that he actually favored a piecemeal pralaya, that the entire universe was not going to go back into dissolution and oneness at one time. There'd always be something manifest, but that different parts of the universe would be extinguished into some sort of a pralaya and then reborn. And that might be the situation with black holes and white holes and quasars. It may be that you've got a local pralaya going into a black hole, and then it leaks out and perhaps comes out in white holes as another new universe. And then, of course, there's the recycling universe that we've talked about sometimes, where if you look at the uncertainty principle, you realize that as the particles are approaching your observable boundary of the universe, that you lose track of them because their energy gets so low that where they are, the uncertainty about where they are has to go to infinity, because the product of those two things has to be less than a very small number, Planck's constant over 2 pi. So if the energy approaches zero, then you've got to have an extremely large number to multiply it by in order to stay greater than that very small number. That means that the things that are disappearing out of your universe at your observable border could reappear anywhere, and so that would give you a recycling universe. And talk about inscrutables. Everything in a black hole becomes completely unknowable. You end up with a singularity, and all you see, we try to know everything in terms of physics and mathematics. We try to get equations that describe what's happening with everything, and when you get equations that have something over zero, you end up with an indeterminate number, an infinity. It doesn't make any sense anymore. And this is what happens when you go try to do the mathematics going into a black hole. There are too many singularities that no longer make any sense. And so that's a nice metaphor for needing to transcend the physical universe. The physical universe, you're never going to be able to make complete sense out of it because it's a world of Maya. And the world of Maya is like a dream. It's like trying to explain everything about your dream. Now, you can go to a Jungian analyst and try to figure out what the meaning of some of your dreams are, but there's still going to be things in there that don't make any sense. And dreams don't necessarily connect, and they don't seem to have a particular beginning or an end. You just suddenly find yourself in a dream, and then you wake up, and a lot of times they're unresolved. And so the whole thing is kind of this mysterious process where it doesn't seem to have a beginning or an end, and yet you're in it, and you can explain it, and or at least try to explain it in certain terms. So this universe that we're in seems to be like that. We make attempts at explaining it, and there's a lot of it that we can explain, but ultimately there are aspects of it that go beyond our ability to explain it. All right, but anyway, that's the infinite, and the infinite alone is real. And the infinite is God. Hence, God is the only reality. All right, so let's continue.
The same reasoning applies to the human being. The self, which dwells in the body, is not the body. So the boundary line of the body is not its boundary line. Yet it is true that every part of this body is animated by the self, If I touch your arm, I touch you, which shows that you are everywhere in the body. But although the self or soul is inside, it is not confined by the body. Now let us find out your boundary line. Your body exists, your mind exists, and you exist. These three make up you: body, mind, and self. But although you are connected with the body, yet every moment you prove that you are not the body. That is merely something which you train and direct. Therefore, what is true of the body need not be true of you. Next, what is the mind? The mind is that which thinks, remembers, and desires. So thinking is the outcome of doubt. But soul can have no doubt. It knows everything. Hence soul, the real self within you, is that which does not think. It is also that which does not will. For only he who doubts thinks, and only he who desires wills. He who is perfectly rich desires nothing. Willing is based on desire, which comes from a sense of incompleteness, a lack somewhere. The soul is free from self-will because it is wantless, and that which has no want is perfect. Therefore, the soul, being free from want, must be perfect.
Of course, we see our own bodies changing all the time. You can go through your old photo albums and see what you looked like when you were a little kid and what you were like in school and so forth. You might even get a good joke out of some of it, looking at the old pictures of the way hair and clothes and things were thought as being fashionable in particular periods. And of course, we know our minds change. We go through school and we get new information, we get new opinions, we change our opinions, we change our belief systems. And if you've ever been touched with a friend or a loved one that's gone through dementia, you know that they then begin to lose their faculties. They can no longer do the things they used to do. They can no longer remember the things they used to remember. And yet the soul of the person remains the same. The Atman remains the same. So throughout all of these changes of the body and the mind, the soul remains the constant, because it is the Atman, and that's one with Brahman. All right, let's continue.
Soul again can have no emotions. It has no anger, no pleasure or pain. For all these emotions create unrest, and the soul is absolutely calm. There's no wave in it. Emotion is a sign of weakness rather than of strength. For when emotion agitates the mind, it shows that the feeling is stronger than the mind, and so overcomes it. But this is no feeling stronger than the soul, hence it is never agitated. As Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, it is like the ocean into which many streams and rivers enter and are lost, but it maintains its steady level. That undisturbed being goes by the name of soul. You may add to it or take away from it, as you can never increase or diminish it. Thus, studying body and mind, we see that they are limited. But soul, being different from body and mind, is unlimited. The body is born and grows, and the mind too grows. The man's mind is not like the boy's mind, so body has growth and mind has growth. But this does not indicate greatness. It rather indicates weakness, because it shows them to be incomplete. But the soul is that which never grows. It never changes. The boy at the high school is quite different from the baby in arms. The same body is not there, nor the same mind, but the same person is there. This proves to us that the soul does not change. It is always the same. Therefore, you must know that in your true nature you have no growth. And if you do not grow, you do not change. And if you do not change, you must be all full, all perfect. And if you're all perfect, you must be infinite.
So that's a nice meditation, to meditate on this fact of this I consciousness that has streamed through your entire lifetime and will continue to stream through the rest of your lifetime. And yet that I consciousness has nothing to do with the body, the mind, your accomplishments or your failures, your particular living circumstances, your particular circle of friends. Doesn't have anything to do with any of that. It's the permanent, infinite I that's one with Brahman, that is identifying falsely with all of these other things. It's the continuum within all of those things. Just like an actor can take on different roles in different movies, and they might sit down and watch all these different movies that they were in, movies where they played perhaps a villain or kind of a crazy person or some suave, debonair person. So they can sit there and watch all of that, and they realize that all of those people were just characters that they played. And so similarly, we're in that situation as well. While we're in this world of Maya, we're playing characters in the big drama of Mahamaya. All right.
Is that self in you that knows? Do the eyes know anything, or the ears? Does even the mind know anything? No, only when you come does this organism begin to perceive, will, and remember. Mind can know only when you are there. The power of knowing is innate in you. It is not something you acquire. Consciousness and you are synonymous.
Yeah, you know they've done experiments too where they've shown that there's something in you beyond your mind that makes decisions before your mind does. And you can see that before you decide to move your arm, you've already decided to move your arm, but your brain doesn't know you've decided to move your arm. So that's another indication that there's something behind the mind. People that have Alzheimer's sometimes experience a brief period of lucidity just before they pass away. Again, indicating that even though the mind, the physical brain is diseased, there's something beyond that which can manifest through even the diseased organs of the mind. So we have a lot of hints that we're not this body and this mind, but we often ignore them. Okay, let's continue.
The power of knowing is innate in you. It's not something you acquire. Consciousness and you are synonymous. You are made up of consciousness. When this consciousness stands behind the mind, as the astronomer behind the telescope, then it begins to know. Your eyes cannot see any more than the telescope sees the stars. Nor can your ears hear, your tongue taste, or your mind think. Being conscious also, you must be infinitely conscious. For consciousness is formless, and hence is infinite. And if you are infinitely conscious, you must be infinitely powerful. Nothing can overwhelm you. Food changes your body. What you hear and learn changes your mind, but nothing can change you. You are the changeless, and hence eternally calm. Also, you must be birthless and deathless. But that which is formless, changeless, birthless, and deathless is what is called truth. So the soul is truth. The soul again is eternal, peaceful, all blissful, all knowing. But this is what God is. And as things equal to the same thing, or equal to each other, the soul must be of like nature with God, and one with Him. This is why the great Vedic sages declare, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, or one with the Absolute.
Yeah, so all those great dictums indicate the identity of consciousness with the true self, and that consciousness is within you and within all other beings. And indeed, in the entire universe, it's consciousness that has become all of this. It's become all of the manifest universe. Not just us, but what we normally call as inanimate as well. All of that has consciousness behind it. It's interesting, the great psychologist Fechner had that kind of experience. He came out of an episode of blindness. He was temporarily blind, and he sort of went into a very prayerful, meditative state for a long time and was cured of his blindness. And when he came out, he said he saw everything be sold. That was, of course, the way a Christian would put it. How else were they going to? They're not going to talk about all-pervading consciousness necessarily. So he says, the rocks and the trees and the birds, everything seemed to be sold to him. So he had that experience of an all-pervading consciousness. All right, let's continue.
But who are you? I is the label of this bodily manifestation. It is born with body and dies with body. But we know that when the body is worn out, there is something in the body which does not die. And that principle within is called the Jivatman, or individual soul. Body, mind, and ego make up man. Mind and ego make up the Jivatman. Jivatman is that which existed prior to this present body and will exist after the body, but always in connection with the body, either gross or subtle. It is constantly developing with each body. It may get different experiences. It leaves one body and goes to another. Therefore, it has motion. But the Paramatman, or Supreme Self of man, has no motion. It is changeless and infinite. And being infinite, it must be one. Jivatmans are innumerable, and their life is unlimited. Ahamkaras, or egos, are also innumerable, but they die. While the Paramatman is one and deathless. Kamaras are many. Jivatmans are many, but Paramatman is one. It is the center of the circle. And as there are many radii which meet in one center, so while as radii are many, we are all one in the center, the Paramatman.
And of course, when you read accounts of people having experiences of lives in between lives through regression therapy or something of that nature, it's that Jivatman that's going through that. It's not the well, of course, the soul has to be there too, but it's the Jivatman that's still being identified with one body after the other. And so in this period in between lives, that Jivatman experiences that it's learned some lessons and it's got some more lessons to learn and so forth. That's obviously not your Atman, because your Atman doesn't have any lessons to learn. Your Atman is ever perfect and ever pure. But the Jivatman is struggling to identify with that perfection and has to go through various lessons in order to shake off that ignorance. All right. Do you feel like reading another paragraph?
The Paramatman, or Supreme Self, seems to be occupying this body. But in reality, he is occupying all bodies. He's everywhere. And how can we know him? By going into our own soul. We can find him when the fire of wisdom has burned up the dross and separated the real from the unreal in us. This Paramatman is truth, and all power is in truth. Whatever goes away from truth must perish. So falsehood has no hope, while truth is life itself. It is always perfect. Therefore, our first duty should be to unite ourselves with truth by clearly understanding that it is from truth we have come and not from falsehood. Blessed are they who realize that they have come out of truth. In truth they live, and into truth they will emerge. And unfortunate are they who believe that out of matter they have come, and that it is this world which gives them life. They are thirsting for life and courting death. They are seeking misery, imagining it to be happiness. They are drinking poison, taking it for nectar.
Yeah, and of course there are so many examples of that. We enjoy eating certain foods, but if you keep eating that food over and over again, you end up being sick. You end up being so stuffed and full that you're very uncomfortable. So if you let your sense organs run amok, this is the difficulty. Of course, the addictions are kind of the ultimate problem of that sort. When somebody ends up using some addictive substance, and they want more and more and more of it because there's this urge to satisfy this craving, but the craving's never satisfied. In fact, that's the ultimate way of illustrating that satisfying a craving simply makes them worse. That's really the expressed in the ultimate sense when you're running into an addiction. But it's something that we experience, as I say, even in an ordinary sense, where you might enjoy some ice cream, and if you've not eating with other people, you might sit down and finish off the whole carton, and then then you're sorry you finished off the whole carton because you don't feel good. So this is the problem. Or binge watching TV. You start binge watching your favorite show, and pretty soon it's 3 a.m. and you have to get up at 6, and you're sorry you did it. So all of these cravings that we have, that we try to satisfy, end up running us into trouble, and not into really satisfying desires. Same thing with clothes. People buy so many clothes they can't even wear them all. We've run into a few people that buy more clothes than they ever wear, and you find when they die they've got all these unopened boxes of clothes cluttering up their house. And they can't, how many can you enjoy wearing at the same time? And so we keep thinking that buying something, and of course now it's so easy to buy stuff. You just click online. You don't even have to get in your car or walk down to the store. You just have it delivered. And they have all these shopping shows that show you all these wonderful things that you absolutely have to have. You know, it's this is the one that'll really make you happy. And of course you just end up buying it, and it sits in a box along with all the other stuff that you bought that you didn't need. So his point is very well taken, that what we really need to concentrate is who we really are and not who we think we are in this dream world of Maya. All right, so next week we will be starting with the true self of man. Sorry they keep using man, but that's the way the clumsy English language is, especially the way it was written 100 years ago. All right, we'll close with a chant. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Om, peace, peace, peace. Books is another one.